question for you. How many of you here, and now if you don't want to answer this question, you can keep your hands down, because I understand. How many of you think that the New Testament, as a majority of the books, were originally written in Greek? Either nobody or nobody wants to raise their hand. Okay, we do have one, two, there's a few, three. Oh, used to. Okay. How many of us used to think that the New Testament was written? Virtually everybody. How many of you think that the majority of the New Testament was originally written in Aramaic? Okay, maybe 10%. How many think it was in Hebrew? Okay, probably about 50%. Why? Why do you believe that? Is that wishful thinking? Do you have evidence of that? If you were getting into discussion with somebody, could you defend your belief that the majority of the New Testament was originally written in Hebrew? How many of you could? 10, 12. Okay, a few of you. That's good. What I want to do is present to you some material, just the tip of the iceberg here, on the Semitic origins of the New Testament. And I say Semitic because there are some that could have been written in Aramaic, but I personally believe that the majority of them were originally written in Hebrew for several reasons, and I'm going to present that material here. An overview of what we're going to be going through. Archaeological evidence. What have we discovered over the last 100 years? Biblical archaeology is only about 100 years old. It's a fairly recent form of archaeology. Actually, archaeology as a whole is fairly recent. It used to be you just found something neat and threw it away. You didn't care. We've now recognized that we need to preserve these things. Biblical archaeology is about 100 years old, and there's a lot of people that are going to the land of Israel and finding a lot of things. We looked at some examples yesterday or the day before. We'll take a look at historical evidence. What does history itself tell us about the writings of the New Testament? Manuscript evidence. Textual evidence is what is the textual evidence of the Bible itself. The New Testament itself, does it contain any information that can help us to answer that question? And then lastly, the cultural evidence. Let's start with archaeological evidence. This here is a coin minted in Israel around the time of Yeshua. Can anybody read that? It's kind of hard to read, but anybody recognize the letters there? It's Yod, Resh, Vav, Shin, Lamed, Mem. Yerushalayim. Right, that's very good. That script is in what I call the late Hebrew script or Aramaic square script. It's Aramaic letters. We talked a lot about that before. It is a coin minted around the time of Yeshua, which is around, we'll say, 30 A.D. And what language is it written in? Hebrew. Not Greek. Hebrew. So we have a small amount of evidence of that. Here's another coin that was minted around the same time. I used this picture in another slide in another presentation. You have the Shin, the Mem, and the Ayin. What's that spell? Shema. Very good. Now, interestingly, this one is not written in the Aramaic or in the late Hebrew Aramaic script, but it's written in the Paleolithic or Paleo-Hebrew. It's the older form. This is really the Hebrew alphabet here. The Yerushalayim is written in Aramaic script, but this one's written in the ancient Hebrew pictographic script. All of the coins minted in Israel during the time of Yeshua were all in Hebrew that were minted by the Jews. This is a picture, just a simple picture of one of the Dead Sea Scroll fragments. 90% of the fragments and scrolls found in the Dead Sea Caves are written in Hebrew. Not just the biblical scrolls, not the copies of Genesis and Exodus, etc., but daily scrolls on daily tasks, how to do certain things, cooking instructions, all these things. They're in Hebrew. Now, if you're an American and you're here in America and you're going to write out some details of how you do your day, what are you going to write it in Greek? No, you're going to write it in English, your mother tongue. And that's what they did at the Dead Sea. They were written in Hebrew. Now, there are 5% that are written in Aramaic and 5% that are written in Greek. So there is a small percentage of those too, but the vast majority are in Hebrew. This is a letter written by Simon Bar Kokhba. He was the general of the Jewish army during the revolt of 135 A.D. We're talking 100 years after Yeshua. And this is some instructions to his lieutenants during the war. A couple of things interesting here. First of all, we found out through this that his name is not Simon Bar Kokhba. It's Shimon ben Kosva. That's actually what his real name was. And it's in Hebrew, ben Kosva. There's a word right here, tashmayim. What's a colloquialism? You familiar with the term colloquialism? He isn't here. We do not say he is not here. We say he isn't here. That's a colloquialism. Taking words and kind of cramming them together to make them smaller because we want to get our words out really, really fast. All languages have colloquialism. However, a colloquialism can only occur in a living language. The reason I bring this up is this is Hebrew. This is Hebrew. Some people could propose that, yes, he was writing in Hebrew as code because nobody knew Hebrew anymore, so he was writing in code to his lieutenants. Well, no, that's not true because he uses a colloquialism here. You can't do that in a language that's not spoken. The colloquialism is tashmayim, which is if you wanted to say, like for example in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim. The et identifies the direct object of verb. The direct object is hashemayim, the sky or the heavens. So you would say et ha-shemayim. But a colloquialism that we found here is that they took the aleph and dropped it from the word et. They took the ha from ha-shemayim and dropped it, crammed the t over to shemayim, and you got shmayim. It's a colloquialism, just like our words isn't or aren't. That proves that this was his language. It's not Aramaic, it's not Greek, it's Hebrew. Historical evidence. This is just a rendition of Josephus. Okay, Josephus, he's an interesting character. He is a Jew. This is during the revolt, or the first revolt, or 70 A.D., when the temple was destroyed. He was a Jew, and the story as I hear it, and I'm not saying that this is 100% correct, but this is the way that I hear it, is that he saw that they were losing. So what do you do if your side's losing? You jump to the other side. So he slipped out in the middle of the night and went over to the Romans and said, hey guys, I'm a Jew, but I can help you out a lot. Anyway, so that's how he survived all of this. And he wrote down a lot of history about the Jewish people. Here's one of the quotes from his writings. I have also taken a great deal of pains to obtain the learning of the Greeks and understanding the elements of the Greek language. Although I have so long accustomed myself to speak our own language that I cannot pronounce Greek with sufficient exactness. For our nation does not encourage those that learn the languages of many nations. What Josephus is saying here is that the Jews do not learn other languages. The book of Maccabees is another historical evidence to show the Jewish or Judaism's view of the Greek people. Basically, in a nutshell, the story of the Maccabees is the Greeks came in, took Jerusalem, and they basically said, we're going to kill you if you don't follow our way of thinking and worship our gods and stuff like that. So what do the Jews do? Some of them say, okay. And they join them and they start following Greek ways. Other Jews, the ones who were devout to the Torah, said, no, we will not. And not only did they say, no, we're not going to follow the Greek ways, they went in and killed the Jews who did follow the Greek way. This was how serious they were about the Greek culture. They did not want anything to do with it. These are just some of the many, many quotes from the church fathers.